Well, welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to be beginning in Chapter 7, which deals with interventions. Now, we just touched on it briefly several weeks ago and talking about the different types of intervention, but today we're going to go into specifics about how each one will affect the organization and how these dimensions will help to facilitate both change and sometimes, in some cases, innovation and creativity. So let's go ahead and begin with a look at interventions. Welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to be looking at designing interventions. Now, what is an intervention? Well, as you see here, an intervention is a set of sequenced and planned actions or events that are intended to help the organization increase its effectiveness. And you see here in red, the purpose is to disrupt the status quo. So the way things have always been is really not the focus or the issue when it comes to intervention. When people call for an intervention, they're looking to change their way of thinking, their way of doing, whether it's processes, whether it's structure, design, product, service, whatever. This is a set of sequence. That means it goes in order and planned, which means it's intentional and thought out to help the organization increase its effectiveness. And this is what an OD does when they come into an organization to help in the change process. Now, we've looked at the four major types of interventions in the past, but we've never really gone over it. This chapter deals with the four types of intervention in detail, so let's take a look at those. First of all, you have the human process intervention. You have process consultation, which you're engaging the experts in looking at different ways of doing things in the organization. Whether it's your process or whatever, you're consulting with the practitioners and looking at better and more efficient ways of doing business. Third-party interventions. This is conflict resolution. When an OD practitioner comes in, there may be pre-existing conflict or there may be conflict that goes on during the change process. So they get involved with that, team building. And there is a process to building a team. It doesn't happen overnight. And really, for teams to be effective and operate the way that they would prior to them forming, it usually takes a year or more. So this is a lengthy process that the OD practitioner can help get the organization in the right track of doing. You have organization confrontation meeting, and this is coming together and just really bringing to the table the issues that are involving that organization and confronting these issues. Intergroup relations, this is where the group dynamic comes into play. The OD works with the groups to understand the dynamic of groups, whether it's the individuals within the group, which is intergroup, or intragroup, which is between groups. So the OD practitioner helps with that. Large group interventions, where you're looking at the organization spanning past just the workers, but maybe stakeholders and so forth. I've given the example before. There was a restaurant called Hooters, and most everybody has heard of Hooters. But when they wanted to open up in Horn Lake, Mississippi, there was a lot of concern and a lot of backlash over that. So they had to really win the community over and the council over. So that would be an intervention. I'm sure they hired people to come in and advocate and intervene on their behalf. Culture change, and we've looked at diversity in the past, but culture is a ever-growing presence in the workplace, and being able to navigate all of the different cultural values and norms and so forth and still get the job done, that's a fairly daunting task. Technostructural interventions, and these types of interventions involve not only engineering, which is a technical side, but also integrates the social sciences, as we've seen before, sociology, psychology, anthropology, political science, and so forth. So this is the coming together of the technical and the people-oriented type of disciplines. You have parallel structures, which accommodate more complex and ambiguous problems that occur in the workplace. Not every problem is going to have a simple solution. You may have to enlist the help of other entities within the organization. And I believe the textbook talks about how unions and management can come together to solve problems and so forth. So that would be parallel structures. Total quality management. Again, this is the Deming philosophy of empowering and letting the worker really meet and fulfill their potential. Deming believed that the worker should be empowered to make decisions, and this is really some of the beginnings of what we see today as the learning organization. Job enrichment is making the environment, the job itself, more fulfilling to the worker. Self-managed work teams. These are teams that have evolved. Usually takes more than a year for this to happen, but they go from being managed to where they can manage themselves. That takes a while because not only are you learning the technical side, the job side of it, you also have to deal with the interrelational side of it, where people are working together and there's a set of norms established and there's a hierarchy, or there may not be much of a hierarchy at all. If everybody is working together and the group is informal, you may go through and be able to function very effectively without there being a whole lot of leader or management structure there. And then re-engineering, unfortunately, that's a term that means laying off or downsizing, or just re-engineering the way things are done. And it usually means getting rid of excess, which could be at times employees. Now, human resource management interventions. You're dealing with goal setting and setting the goals for the departments, for the organization. What are the quantifiable objectives that you have? Well, this is all a part of goal setting, and how the within the change itself, what are the goals of the change? Performance appraisal. How are we going to evaluate people? Are you going to use a standard way that most people use once a year and it's done by the supervisor? Or are you going to use more up-to-date contemporary models of performance appraisal to let the person know how well they're performing? Reward systems involve all of the elements that go into compensating a person for their efforts. And as the organization evolves, so too should your reward strategies evolve. Coaching and mentoring and leadership development, career planning and development, all of these are, again, TQM realm type issues where you become less of an autocrat, a do as I say, period type person, to being an encourager. You know, if you are familiar with the Bible, you know in Acts, as Paul first started his conversion, as he became a new convert, no one wanted to have anything to do with him, but one person, Barnabas, was there to bring him along. So this is what many managers are trying to be today, less of an autocrat and more of a Barnabas. Managing workforce diversity, and that's an issue today that we are having to deal with. And we're a melting pot, so we have many different cultures, and with that we have values and beliefs and norms and so forth. And intervention is trying to bring all of this diversity together to make things work for the organization. And then employee stress and wellness, and that's in the form of EAPs, employee assistance programs, where they are experiencing a better, more fulfilling work environment, and you're doing what you need to do to reduce the stress that's placed upon the worker so that they will be more productive and as a result, more healthy a lot of times. Now, strategic change interventions, when it comes to that, you're looking at integrated strategic change, which means that any change that takes place, you have to be able to align the structure, the design, the goals, the vision, the mission with the change itself. So all of these things have to be working together. Organization design oftentimes needs to be changed as you go from the more traditional bureaucracies to a more organic structure. There's going to be a need to just change the overall design of the organization. And that goes down to the fundamentals of the organization. Those may need to be changed. Downsizing, well, that's re-engineering. Dynamic strategy making. Today, change is the only constant in business. So companies today have to be resilient. They have to be, as you see here, learning from the environment, taking from the environment as they give back to the environment. They need to be free of excess, so they have to be agile. It's the small organizations today that experts believe will be the successful businesses of the 21st century. The large, very slow mega corporations, they're going by the wayside. And you see places like Sears, who have been slow to change, they're suffering tremendously. In fact, I don't know if there's very many Sears left. Alliances and networks, mergers and acquisitions, these are all ways of creating synergy, which means that if I combine my efforts with other organizations, then the cumulative outcome of my input will be greater than what I could have produced on my own. So that's where you see companies coming together, working together, and forming alliances and creating what we call economies of scope so that you can get more bang for the buck. For instance, if you go to a gas station, oftentimes now you will see a Dunkin' Donuts or a Burger King or something like that, and that just makes sense. While I'm out pumping gas, I smell those burgers. Hey, I can go in here and grab something to eat real quick. Or if I'm hungry and I pull in to go get a burger, well, hey, I might as well fill up while I'm here. So think about the genius of that just coming together. And then we see here sustainable management organizations and global social change. These are organizations that are designed to be self-sustaining. They have grown, they have evolved, they are equipped with people who are autonomous, they are developed, and they can meet the challenges of not only the local market but also global markets. Now, what are the characteristics of an effective intervention? Well, it needs to be relevant to the needs of the organization. That goes without saying. And that's based on valid information about the relevance of the intervention. Free and informed choice. You need to be, as an OD professional, upfront with all the information that they need to determine whether or not intervention is needed. And then an internal commitment, and that goes from the top down. Here's where management and leadership really need to be take the lead on these things as they get as the OD people get the support. They're able to accomplish a lot more than just trying to do it on their own. It's based on valid knowledge of intended outcomes. What are the intended outcomes? This is what you iron out when you first get to the negotiation and contracting phase of the OD relationship with an organization. And does it transfer competence and capability to manage change to organization members? So is there a passing on of everything that you're trying to do? Will it transfer to the members of the organization? Now, there are contingencies related to the change situation. You have individual differences among organization members. Now, here you have the differences of opinion, differences of priorities, differences of values and so forth when it comes to the fundamentals of the organization. I've been in some organizations where they all wanted to do something different because they were looking at the intervention and the change from different perspectives. So you've got to bring that all together. Then you also have to deal with the management. What style do they embrace? If they're the old style, we're going to do it my way or else, you're going to have difficulties. And then you have to look at the technical uncertainty that comes along with the change. Or do you have the resources that will bring about the change? And then you have the degree of top management support. Now here I have seen some organizations whose CEO or president will be for the change. But then when you start to look at them and how they may need to change, they withdraw support. They're very quick to point out other people's faults, but they are slow to recognize and admit that they may have some that will hamper the organization and its ability to move forward. So just be aware of that. And finally, you have culture values. And culture values and economic development goes on with the diversity issues. You have different values that the people will bring to the workplace. What you want to instill is a corporate value. This is what we value here at XYZ Company. And these are the things that we hold dear and value, and these are the norms. So you can do it. It just takes a concerted effort and patience and investment of your time and efforts to do that. And you see that a lot of times in churches. There's a lot of similarities in organizations and churches when it comes to interventions. You might have thought while I was doing this presentation, hey, there's some complexities in my church that we need to maybe partner and come together on to try to solve. Maybe we have a leadership that is aversive to change or very rigid and so forth. So it works in ministry as well as it does in business and so forth. But the more you know about it, the better off you're going to be. The idea is to take people from where they are to where they want to be. You have a vast amount of resources that will help you do that, but you can have all the resources in the world, but if the people are not willing to change, if they're not willing to accept the intervention that you're offering, you're really going to have a difficult time. And oftentimes, this is why interventions fail. And a lot of times when you take a look at a person's personal life, you can intervene. You want to disrupt the way that they are living. Well, some of them won't go that quickly or that easily. Some are going to fight it, and you just need to be aware that may happen too in organizations. But you stick to the principles and you won't go wrong. Well, today we had a chance to look a little bit more in depth at the different types of interventions that are available. We looked at techno-social, we took a look at human process, human resource, strategy. So there are many ways that an intervention can occur in an organization depending on what they need. Just know that there's no one cookie cutter approach to intervening and assisting companies in whatever type of goals they may have and objectives. Well, that's all we have for today, and we will resume tomorrow.